Good evening, and welcome. You are listening to a long story, that spans a century and touches the very heart of what it means to be human. It is the story of a man who was a boy from a royal kraal, a runaway prince, a lawyer, a freedom fighter, a fugitive, a prisoner, and finally, a president. This is the story of Nelson Mandela. But this is not a story to be rushed. It is one to be absorbed, to be understood. It is a story about the stubbornness of the human spirit, the terrible cost of conviction, and the quiet revolutionary power of forgiveness. So, find a comfortable place, settle in, let the distractions of your day begin to fade. There is nowhere else you need to be. Let your breathing slow, and let us begin, not in the halls of power or the darkness of a cell, but in the red earth of the Transkei, under a wide African sky. Chapter 1. The Boy from Mvezo, 1918-1927. Our story begins in a small, quiet village called Mvezo, nestled on the banks of the Mbashe River in the region known as the Transkei. The year is 1918. The world is consumed by a great war, but here, life is governed by older, slower rhythms. The air is warm, smelling of wood smoke, and the sweet grass that feeds the cattle. Life is lived in a circle, the circle of the village, the kraal, and the circle of the seasons. Into this world, on the 18th of July, a boy is born to Nosekeni Fanny and Gadla Henry Mfakanyiswa. His mother is the third of Gadla's wives. His father is a chief, a respected counselor to the Thembu king, a man of status and influence. The boy is given the name Rolihlahla. In the Xhosa language, this name prophetically means pulling the branch of a tree, or more colloquially, troublemaker. The world of the young Rolihlahla is one of pastoral simplicity. As a boy, his days are spent in the fields. He learns to herd cattle, the primary measure of wealth and status. He learns to drink milk warm from the cow, to fashion slingshots and fight with sticks alongside the other boys. He is steeped in the traditions of his people. His world is not yet defined by the stark, brutal lines of black and white, but by the rich, complex tapestry of Xhosa custom, family, and duty. His father, Gadla, is a man of proud, stubborn principle. He is a local chief, appointed by the Thembu king, but he exists under the larger, distant authority of the white magistrate. One day, this authority collides with his father's pride. A dispute arises over a stray ox. The magistrate summons Gadla to his court. Gadla, feeling the summons disrespects his position, refuses. Why, he wonders, should I obey this white man who overrules the customs of my fathers? This single act of defiance is the narrative core of his early life. The consequence is immediate and severe. The magistrate, incensed by this insubordination, strips Gadla of his chieftainship, his land, and his wealth. The family is cast out. They lose their position, their status, and their home in Mvezo. And so the troublemaker, the young Rolihlahla, is set adrift. The family is forced to move to a new, humbler village called Kunu. It is a dislocation, a quiet humiliation, and it is, perhaps, the boy's very first, indirect lesson in the arbitrary and unforgiving nature of colonial power. He had lost his home, not to a natural disaster or a tribal war, but to a word, an order from a man in a faraway office. This quiet loss, this uprooting, was the first small tremor of the earthquake that was to come. Chapter 2. The Empty Throne, 1927-1934. In the quiet valley of Kunu, life was different. It was smaller, humbler, The family was poorer. Rolihlahla was no longer the son of an active chief, but the son of a deposed one. His days were still filled with the tasks of a country boy, but the shadow of his father's loss hung in the air. And then, when Rolihlahla was just 9 years old, his father, Gadla, died. The loss was profound. It left the family unmoored, but his mother, Nosekeni, a woman of great resolve, knew that her son's path could not be left to chance. He was of royal blood, and despite their poverty, that meant something. She made a decision that would alter the course of his life forever. She took young Rolihlahla to Mkekezweni, the Great Place, the royal residence of the Thembu people. There she presented her son to the regent, Chief Jongintaba Dalindiebo, the acting paramount king. She was, in effect, giving her son away, handing him over to be raised as a ward of the king, as his father's legacy demanded. The transition was jarring. Suddenly, the boy from the humble fields of Kunu was living in the court of a king. Mkekezweni was the political and cultural center of Thembuland. Here, Rolihlahla was thrust back into a world of privilege and responsibility. He was not the regent's son, but he was treated as one, alongside the regent's actual son and heir, Justice. His internal world must have been a swirl of confusion and observation. He was an insider, yet an outsider. He was royalty, yet he was a ward. This position gave him a unique perspective. He sat in the regent's courtyard, listening. He heard the tribal councils, the Inkundla. He watched as old men, chiefs, and commoners came to voice their grievances. And he watched, with fascination, as the regent, Jongintaba, listened. This was the narrative core of his new life, observing leadership. Jongintaba did not rule by decree. He would listen, for hours, to every voice. He would wait until all had spoken, until the arguments had exhausted themselves. Only then would he guide the group toward a consensus. For the young Mandela, this was a profound, formative education in leadership. It was not about power, it was about consensus. It was not about ruling, it was about listening. This education at the Great Place transformed him. The regent, his new guardian, saw to it that he and Justice would receive the best education possible to prepare them to one day counsel the future king. This path, set for him by his guardian, would take him far beyond the traditional councils of Mkekezweni. The first step was a Western-style mission school, a place that would give him a new name and a new window onto the world. Chapter 3. The Weight of a Name, 1934 to 1939. The next stop on this unfolding journey was Clarkberry Boarding Institute. The scene is a stark contrast to the pastoral, traditional life of the Great Place. Clarkberry is a Methodist mission school, a collection of red brick buildings in the English style, set down in the hills of the Transkei. The air is no longer filled with the rhythms of tribal council, but with the ringing of bells, the cadence of English prayers, and the strict timetables of a Western education. For a boy raised in Xhosa custom, this new world is alien, and it is here, on his very first day, that a small, seemingly simple event occurs that encapsulates the entire colonial experience. His teacher, Miss Madingene, asks him his name. He replies, Rolihlahla. She tells him that this name will not do, that he must have a Christian name, an English name. She thinks for a moment and then bestows one upon him. Nelson. In that moment, Rolihlahla, the troublemaker, becomes Nelson, the student. It is a moment of quiet, cultural erasure. He doesn't question it. He simply accepts it. This is the price of admission to this new world. His internal world is now one of duality. At Mkekezweni, he is a Thembu royal. At Clarkberry, he is Nelson, a native boy being civilized. He is a diligent student. He is disciplined, serious, and somewhat aloof. He excels. He discovers a love for sports, particularly long-distance running and boxing. The discipline of training, the rhythm of running, the self-reliance of the boxer, these things appeal to his stoic, controlled nature. He is learning English, history, geography, a curriculum designed to show the superiority of British civilization. From Clarkberry, he moves to Healdtown, a larger, more prestigious Wesleyan college, sometimes called the Den of the Natives. Here, he is among the elite of Black South Africa. He is being groomed, but for what? The system is designed to create a small class of educated natives who can serve the colonial administration as clerks, as interpreters, as teachers, but never as equals. The core of this chapter in his life is this process of meticulous, Western-based education. He is absorbing it all, but he is also, quietly, observing its contradictions. He is taught about British justice, but he sees the injustice all around him. He is taught about English parliamentary democracy, but he has no vote. And so, as he graduates from Healdtown, he is a new kind of man. He is no longer just a Xhosa boy. He is Nelson Mandela, a product of two irreconcilable worlds. He carries the traditions of Mqhekezweni and the education of Healdtown. The regent, Jongin Taba, is proud, and he has the final step of his plan ready. Nelson, he decides, will go to the pinnacle of black education in southern Africa, the University of Fort Hare.
Chapter 4. The Runaway Prince, 1939 to 1941. The University of Fort Hare. In 1939, this was not just a college, it was an oasis. It was the only university for black Africans in all of southern Africa, a beacon of higher learning that drew students from as far as Kenya and Uganda. The atmosphere is electric, thick with debate, aspiration, and the first whispers of political consciousness. Here, Nelson Mandela is no longer a boy. He is a tall, proud, serious young man. He wears a suit. He is studying English, anthropology, politics, and Roman Dutch law. He is beginning to see the system behind the scattered injustices of his youth. He sees how the law, history, and land ownership are all woven together to create the edifice of white supremacy. His internal world is one of intense focus. He is not, at first, a political firebrand. He is an aristocrat, somewhat aloof, carrying the dignity of his royal upbringing. He is here to fulfill the regent's plan, to get his degree, and return to the Transkei to be a counselor. But Fort Hare is where he builds the most important relationships of his life. He meets a brilliant, devoutly Christian, and deeply intelligent student named Oliver Tambo. Tambo is a scholar, a man of pious thought and deep moral conviction. They are, in many ways, opposites. Mandela is the pragmatic man of action. Tambo is the intellectual, the strategist. They become friends, a friendship that will one day form the unshakable core of a revolution. The narrative core of his time at Fort Hare is not his studies, but his first real political stand. A dispute arises over the quality of food and the limited power of the Students' Representative Council, SRC. The students vote to boycott. Mandela is elected to the SRC, but he and the other members are caught. The university administration demands they compromise. For Mandela, this becomes a matter of principle. He had been elected on a platform of the boycott. He could not, in good conscience, abandon that mandate. The university gives him and his colleagues an ultimatum: stand down from your position or be expelled. Mandela, remembering his father's defiance, refuses to bend. He is suspended from Fort Hare, just short of his degree. He returns to Mkhekezweni in quiet disgrace. The regent, Jongintaba, is furious. His ward has failed him, thrown away the greatest opportunity of his life over food. To Jongintaba, this is youthful foolishness. He decides that what Nelson and his own son, Justice, need is to be settled. He will end this rebellion by arranging marriages for them both. This is the final breaking point. For Mandela, the arranged marriage is not just an unwanted tradition, it is a symbol. It represents the end of his ambitions, the death of his newfound self. It means a return to a provincial, traditional life he has now outgrown. He cannot do it. And so, in the dead of night, the two princes, Nelson and Justice, decide to run. They steal two of the regent's oxen, sell them for money, and board a train. They are fleeing their king, their families, and the destiny that had been laid out for them. They are headed for the one place that represents escape, anonymity, and possibility, Johannesburg, the City of Gold. Chapter 5. The City of Gold, 1941-1904, Johannesburg, Egoli, the City of Gold. In 1941, it is a raw, brutal, and electrifying metropolis. It is a city built on the gold dug from the earth by legions of black miners, a city of staggering wealth and desperate poverty existing side by side. For a young man from the rolling, quiet hills of the Transkei, the arrival is a shock to the system. The noise, the crowds, the towering buildings, and the raw, unvarnished racism. This is not the paternalistic, polite segregation of the Transkei. This is the industrial, economic segregation of the pass laws. Every black man must carry a passbook, proving he has a right to be in the city, a right to work. To be found without it means immediate arrest. Mandela's internal world is a mix of awe, fear, and a hardening resolve. He and Justice arrive with nothing. They are fugitives from their own king. Mandela finds work first as a night watchman at a mine compound. He sees the dehumanizing conditions of the miners and he quits in disgust. He is a country boy, but he is learning fast. This chapter of his life is defined by one central, transformative relationship. He is introduced to a man named Walter Sisulu. Sisulu is a few years older, an estate agent, and a dedicated activist in the African National Congress, ANC. He is a self-taught man of immense warmth, intelligence, and political savvy. He sees immediately the potential in this tall, proud, royal young man. Sisulu becomes the mentor Mandela needs. He is the bridge between Mandela's royal past and his political future. Sisulu gives him a loan. He helps him get a job as an articled clerk at a white-owned law firm, Lazar Sedelsky. And most importantly, he brings Mandela into his home. Sisulu's house in Orlando, Soweto, is a hub. It is a university in its own right. On any given night, the air is thick with smoke, tea, and intense, passionate debate. It is here Mandela meets a new generation of black intellectuals, teachers, lawyers, writers. And it is here that Sisulu formally introduces him to the African National Congress. The narrative core of this period is Mandela's dual education. By day, he is at the law firm, or studying for his law degree at the University of the Witwatersrand. He is the only black student in the law faculty. He learns the white man's law, its structures, its loopholes. But by night, at Sisulu's house, he is learning the reality of the struggle. He is connecting the dots, from the magistrate who deposed his father to the pass laws of Johannesburg,
to the unjust laws he is studying in his textbooks. The runaway prince is finding his true calling. The city of gold has stripped him of his provincial innocence and forged him into an urban activist. The path of a quiet Thembu counselor is gone forever. He joins the ANC. But he and his new friends are finding the organization a little too quiet.
Chapter 6: The Birth of the Youth League, 1984 and 1948, the mid-1940s. The world is at war, fighting for freedom against fascism. But in South Africa, that word freedom has a hollow ring. Mandela, now completing his law articles, and his comrades in Soweto, feel this contradiction acutely. The African National Congress, the organization they have joined, feels old. It is led by polite, educated men who still believe in the power of petitions. They write letters to the British King. They send delegations to London. They believe in appealing to the better nature of the white man. Mandela, Sisulu, and Oliver Tambo, they are impatient. Their internal world is simmering. They are young, they are on the front lines in the city, and they see that this polite approach has achieved nothing. The system is not being reformed, it is being hardened. A new fiery intellectual has emerged among them, Anton Lembede. Lembede is the philosophical father of Africanism, a new, assertive ideology. He argues that black South Africans must shed their inferiority complex. They must lead their own struggle, not as junior partners to white liberals or communists, but as proud, self-reliant Africans. This is the spark. Mandela, Tambo, Sisulu, Lembede, and others. This triumvirate and their circle, they begin to meet, they debate, they argue, they forge a new vision. Mandela, the pragmatist, is wary of Lembede's more pure racial nationalism, but he is completely convinced by the call for a new militant program. And so, in 1904, this revolution within the revolution takes place. They form the ANC Youth League, ANCL. This is the narrative core. It is a direct challenge to the old guard of the ANC. Their manifesto is a jolt of electricity. It calls for Africanism. It rejects any form of white paternalism. And, most critically, it demands a new program of action. What is this program of action? It is the end of polite petitions. It is the beginning of mass struggle. It calls for boycotts, strikes, civil disobedience, and non-cooperation. It is a declaration that the ANC will no longer beg for its rights. It will demand them. The formation of the Youth League is a pivotal moment. It is the new, impatient, radical engine being attached to the old, slumbering train of the ANC. Mandela, with his disciplined mind and royal bearing, becomes a key leader, pushing, organizing, and articulating this new vision. He is no longer just a member of the struggle, he is becoming its architect. The consequences are profound. The Youth League begins to grow, attracting thousands of young, energetic members. They are pushing the entire ANC organization toward a confrontation it has avoided for decades. And just as this new, defiant energy was beginning to rise, the ground beneath their feet shifted, with a political earthquake that would darken the sky for a half-century. Chapter 7: The Iron Wall of Apartheid, 1948 to 1952. In 1948, the unthinkable happened. The National Party, a hard-right Afrikaner nationalist party, won the general election. They had run on a single, sinister, and brutally effective slogan: Apartheid. Apartness. The scene in South Africa changes, almost overnight. What had been a system of customary, ingrained segregation is now to become a systematic, legal, and theological architecture of racial separation. It is not just racism, it is ideological racism codified into law. For Mandela and the Youth League, this is a moment of terrible clarification. There can be no more illusions. The new government is not interested in dialogue. It is interested in domination. The feeling is one of grim, cold determination. The fight has just become infinitely harder and infinitely more necessary. This new political reality collides with Mandela's personal life. He is now married to Evelyn Mace, a nurse from the Transkei. They have children, but the marriage is under immense strain. Mandela's life is now the movement. He is out every night, in meetings, planning, organizing. His home is a secondary concern. Evelyn, meanwhile, is a Jehovah's Witness. Her faith is deep, and it is apolitical. She sees his all-consuming obsession with the struggle as a rejection of God and of his family. Their home becomes a place of quiet, simmering tension. The narrative core of this period is this dark duet: the rise of the apartheid state and the rise of the ANC's response. The government begins to build its iron wall: the Prohibition of Mixed Marriages Act, the Group Areas Act, which dictates where each race can live, the Suppression of Communism Act, a law so broad that communism could mean any act of defiance, any call for equality. In response, the ANC Youth League, now in the ascendancy, finally succeeds in its internal revolution. In 1949, the ANC officially adopts their Program of Action. It is done. The old way of petitions is dead. The new way of mass defiance is now the official policy of the organization. The stage is set for a massive confrontation. The government is building an iron wall of laws, and the ANC, led by Mandela and the Youth League, is preparing to march with bare hands and throw themselves against it. The time for planning was over. The time for defiance had come.
Chapter 8: The Defiance Campaign, 1952. The year is 1952. The scene is the townships, the cities, the whites-only spaces of South Africa. There is a new tension in the air. The ANC, under its new program of action, has prepared its first great offensive. It is called the Defiance Campaign. Mandela, now a rising star in the ANC, is appointed volunteer-in-chief. This role is tailor-made for him. He is a meticulous planner, a disciplined commander, and an inspiring presence. His internal world is one of focused energy. This is not a spontaneous uprising. It is a carefully orchestrated campaign of nonviolent civil disobedience, modeled on the work of Mahatma Gandhi in this very same country, decades before. The narrative core is the campaign itself. The plan is simple and profound. Small, disciplined groups of volunteers, DFERs, will deliberately and peacefully break apartheid laws. They will walk through Europeans-only entrances to post offices. They will sit on whites-only park benches. They will refuse to carry their passbooks. They will do this openly, and they will not resist arrest. This campaign solidifies the Congress alliance. Mandela works side by side with leaders from the South African Indian Congress, like Yusuf Kachalia. This is a multiracial challenge to a uniracial state, and so it begins. All across the country, groups of defiers, men and women, walk calmly to their designated targets. They are arrested. And the next day, another group takes their place, and another, and another. The campaign spreads like fire. The jails begin to fill. Over 8,000 people, 8,000 ordinary citizens, are arrested.
Mandela himself is arrested, charged under the Suppression of Communism Act, and given a suspended sentence. The Defiance Campaign is a massive transformative success, not in changing the laws. The government only responds with harsher laws, but as a psychological victory. It shatters the myth of black passivity. It proves the power of mass action, and it swells the ranks of the ANC from a mere 7,000 members to over 100,000. It turns a small organization of intellectuals into a true mass movement. But the consequences are also personal. The state now knows exactly who Nelson Mandela is. He is no longer just an activist, he is a commander. And so the state uses its new legal weapons. Mandela is banned. A banning order is a uniquely cruel form of political prison. He cannot attend any gathering. He cannot be quoted in the press. He is restricted to the Johannesburg district. He is, in effect, a ghost, silenced and sidelined. The state intended to cut the head off the movement, but a banned lawyer, as they would soon discover, is still a lawyer. Chapter 9. The Law Firm on Fox Street, 1952-1955. In 1952, despite the banning order, a new sign appears on a door in Chancellor House, a modest building on Fox Street in downtown Johannesburg. It reads, Mandela and Tambo. It is the first black-owned law firm in the entire country. The scene is one of constant, grinding human struggle. The small waiting room is filled every single day before the sun even rises. It is filled with people who have nowhere else to go. Men arrested for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Women being evicted from their homes. Workers cheated of their pay. For Mandela and his partner, Oliver Tambo, this is not a business. It is a clinic for the oppressed. Their partnership is a study in contrasts. Mandela is the charismatic, imposing courtroom presence, the fighter. Tambo is the meticulous, brilliant legal mind, the scholar. Together, they are a formidable, if overwhelmed, team. Mandela's internal world is a place of profound, simmering anger. Here, in this office, apartheid is not a political theory. It is the daily weeping wound of his people. He sees the human cost in endless, tragic detail. He is a lawyer, a man who believes in the law, but he is forced to practice in a system where the law itself is the instrument of the crime. He is fighting a tidal wave with a teaspoon. He later wrote of this time, I was swamped by the misery of my people, by the systematic persecution visited upon them by a racist government. I found myself in the center of a vortex. The law was a stacked deck. The narrative core is this daily grind, the endless queue of clients, the small temporary victories, and the overwhelming systemic defeats. He is using the master's tools to chip away at the edges of the master's house, and he knows deep down that it is not enough. This experience at Fox Street has a profound, hardening effect on him. It burns away any last lingering hope he might have had for reform from within. The system cannot be fixed. It must be replaced. And under this immense pressure, his personal life finally fractures. His all-consuming dedication to the law firm by day and the struggle by night leaves nothing for his family. His marriage to Evelyn Mace, which had been ailing for years, ends. She leaves, taking the children. He is, for a time, utterly alone, living in the back room of his own empty office. Banned, isolated, and with his family gone, but his resolve only deepens. Chapter 10, The Freedom Charter, 1955 to 1956. Despite the state's crackdown, despite the bannings and the arrests, the movement was not silenced. It was, in fact, dreaming. The Congress Alliance, the multiracial coalition, decided it was time to not only oppose apartheid, but to present a positive vision for the future. What exactly were they fighting for? The scene is Kliptown, a dusty, open field near Soweto, in June of 1955. Thousands of people have gathered. This is the Congress of the People. It is a gathering unlike anything South Africa has ever seen. Black, white, Indian, and colored delegates from every corner of the nation have come together to create a new vision for their country. But Nelson Mandela is not among them. He is banned. He cannot attend any gathering, and so he is an unseen presence. He watches from a distance, disguised as a milkman, from the rooftop of a nearby building, looking on as the future is being written. His internal world is a mix of pride and intense frustration. He sees this beautiful rainbow gathering, the physical manifestation of his dreams, and he is forced to watch it from the shadows. The narrative core is the document they create, the Freedom Charter. This document is not the work of intellectuals in a smoky room. It is the culmination of a year-long campaign where volunteers were sent to every town and village, asking ordinary people, "What would you want in a free South Africa?" And so the clauses are read out, one by one, to the cheers of the crowd. They are simple, profound, and revolutionary. The people shall govern. All national groups shall have equal rights. The land shall be shared among those who work it. All shall be equal before the law. There shall be houses, security, and comfort. It is a vision of a non-racial, democratic, and deeply humanist, almost socialist South Africa. It is a beacon of hope, a declaration of intent. The consequence is immediate. The Freedom Charter becomes the guiding star of the liberation movement, the why that would sustain them through the darkest years ahead. But for the state, this is not a vision of hope. They see it as a declaration of war. They see the clause on sharing wealth, and they scream communism. They see the call for equality, and they call it treason. The police inevitably raid the gathering, but the charter has been adopted. The dream has been spoken aloud. The government's response would be slow, calculated, and devastating. They had listened to the charter, and they were now preparing to arrest every single person who had signed it, and every leader who had inspired it. Chapter 11. The Shadow of the Gallows, 1956 to 1961. The response comes in the pre-dawn darkness, December 5th, 1956. A hard, pounding knock on the door. Mandela is arrested. All across the country, at the same moment, the leaders of the Congress Alliance are pulled from their homes. 156 people, black, white, Indian, colored, are arrested. The scene is the drill hall in Johannesburg. They are processed, charged, and put on trial. The charge is not for trespassing, not for incitement. The charge is high treason. The penalty is death. This is the treason trial. It is a deliberate, calculated attempt by the state to decapitate the entire liberation movement in one single legal blow. Mandela's internal world is now facing the ultimate test. This is not a suspended sentence. This is the shadow of the gallows. He and his co-accused must balance the public face of defiant leadership with the private, internal fear of execution. But this trial, this shared danger, forges an incredible bond. The 156 accused are a living embodiment of the non-racial future they are fighting for. And it is during this time, in the midst of this long, looming darkness, that a new light enters Mandela's life. He is introduced to a young, fiery, and strikingly beautiful social worker named Nomzamo Winnie Madikizela. She attends the trial. She is a symbol of new life,
of a future that insists on being born, even in the face of death. Their courtship is a whirlwind, conducted in the snatched moments between trial appearances and political meetings. They marry in 1958. Winnie is not a quiet, apolitical partner like Evelyn. She is a fighter in her own right, as committed to the struggle as he is. The narrative core is the trial itself. It drags on and on for 4.5 agonizing years. It is a legal marathon. The state's case is simple: to prove that the Freedom Charter is a communist document and that the ANC intended to overthrow the government by violence. But the defense, led by brilliant lawyers, methodically takes the state's case apart. They put apartheid itself on trial. They cross-examine the state's experts on communism, revealing their ignorance. They force the state to read the Freedom Charter, with its calls for peace and democracy, into the public record. The trial becomes a farce, a massive, expensive embarrassment for the government. And in March of 1961, after 4.5 years, the verdict is delivered. The judges, finding no proof of a violent conspiracy, acquit all remaining defendants. It is a stunning, humiliating defeat for the government. Mandela and his comrades are free. They walk out of the courtroom as heroes. But the South Africa they walk back into is not the one they left. While they had been tied up in court for nearly 5 years, the people's anger had been simmering. And in 1960, in a small, unknown township, that anger had finally, tragically, boiled over. Chapter 12, The Day the Guns Spoke, 1960-1961. While Mandela and the others were in the courtroom, day after day, listening to legal arguments, the struggle on the streets was changing. A new rival organization, the Pan-Africanist Congress, PAC, had split from the ANC, arguing for a more pure Africanist approach. On March 21, 1960, the PAC organized its own, separate protest against the hated pass laws. The scene is the township of Sharpeville. A large crowd, numbering in the thousands, gathers outside the police station. They are unarmed. They are, for the most part, peaceful. They are there to offer themselves up for arrest, in the spirit of the Defiance campaign. But the atmosphere is tense. The police are nervous, outnumbered. And then, something happens. A scuffle, a shot, and then a sustained thunderous volley of gunfire. The police open fire on the unarmed crowd. It is not a warning. It is a massacre. When the shooting stops, 69 people are dead. Most are found to have been shot in the back as they tried to flee. The news from Sharpeville hits the treason trial defendants like a physical blow. Mandela receives the news with cold, sick horror. This is a new, terrible chapter. The state has not just used batons or tear gas. It has used live ammunition on unarmed civilians. This is the narrative core, the Sharpeville massacre. It is the definitive breaking point in the story of the struggle. The government's response is immediate. It declares a state of emergency. It outlaws, bans, both the ANC and the PAC. Overnight, the African National Congress, the organization Mandela had dedicated his life to, the organization founded on principles of nonviolence, is now an illegal organization. To be a member is a crime. The acquittal in the treason trial, which comes a year after Sharpeville, feels hollow. Yes, they are free, but their organization is banned. Their peaceful protests are met with bullets. The government has closed and barred every single door of peaceful legal protest. Mandela, the man who had modeled himself on Gandhi, the man who had championed the Defiance campaign, now has to face a terrible, agonizing question. If the state responds to peaceful protest with bullets,
What now is the appropriate response? His 50 years of faith in nonviolence died on that day at Sharpeville. Chapter 13. The Birth of the Spear, 1961. The year is 1961. The ANC is banned. Mandela is a free man, but a leader without a legal organization. He must now operate in the shadows. He goes underground. The scene is no longer the courtroom or the public rally. It is the secret meeting in the back room of a shop, in a safe house in a quiet suburb, in the dead of night. Mandela, the meticulous lawyer, becomes a fugitive. His internal world is in turmoil. This is the great dilemma of his life. He is a lawyer, a man who believes in order, in dialogue. He is a Hosa royal, taught to seek consensus. He is, by nature, not a man of violence, but he is also a pragmatist. He sees the reality in front of him. Sharpeville has changed the equation. He begins to argue, first with himself and then with his comrades, that the path of nonviolence is now a dead end. It is not a moral failure, but a tactical one. It is, he argues, a form of suicide to continue nonviolent protest in the face of a government that has no problem machine gunning you. This is a deeply painful, agonizing pivot. He has to convince the old guard of the ANC, men like Chief Albert Luthuli, the ANC president, a devout Christian and winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, that this is the only way. The debates are long and they are anguished. Luthuli is horrified by the prospect, but Mandela is persuasive. His logic is cold and clear. The state has chosen violence. We must, at a minimum, learn to defend ourselves and to fight back. Eventually, a compromise is reached. The ANC itself will not formally adopt violence. It will maintain its political, non-violent, moral high ground. But a new separate organization will be formed, an armed wing. It will be allied with the ANC, but officially independent. And so, in 1961, Umkhonto we Sizwe, MK, the Spear of the Nation, is born. This is the narrative core. Nelson Mandela, the lawyer, the volunteer-in-chief of the Defiance Campaign, becomes its first commander-in-chief. He is not a general. He is a lawyer. He must now read not law books, but the works of guerrilla fighters. He studies Che Guevara, Menachem Begin, the wars in Algeria and Vietnam. He and his new soldiers are amateurs, learning how to be revolutionaries. Their plan is not to wage a war on people. Mandela insists on this. They will not be terrorists. They will wage a war of sabotage. They will target the symbols of apartheid, power plants, post offices, government buildings. The goal is not to kill, but to hit the state in its pocket, to make apartheid too expensive to maintain, to force the government, finally, to the negotiating table. On December 16, 1961, a symbolic Afrikaner holiday, the first bombs explode. The spear of the nation has been thrown. Nelson Mandela, the man of peace, is now, in the eyes of the state, a terrorist. Chapter 14. The Black Pimpernel, 1962. To lead this new secret army, Mandela needs training. He needs allies. He needs money. And so, in 1962, he makes the decision to leave South Africa illegally. He is smuggled across the border into Botswana. And for the first time in his life, he is truly free. He steps onto a plane in Ethiopia and is greeted, not as a fugitive, but as a statesman. The scene shifts from the shadows of South Africa to the bright, hopeful capitals of a newly independent Africa. He tours the continent. He meets Emperor Haile Selassie in Ethiopia. He meets President Bourguiba in Tunisia. He is welcomed in Morocco, Mali, Guinea, Ghana. He sees the post-colonial dream in action. Black men and women are governing themselves. He is treated as a head of state in waiting. His internal world is one of exhilaration and profound responsibility. This journey hardened my determination to live as a free man and to return to my country to help my people. He travels to Algeria, which is in the midst of its own bloody war of liberation, and he receives military training. He learns how to use explosives, how to fire a pistol. From Africa, he travels to London. He meets Oliver Tambo, his old law partner, who is now running the ANC in exile. They meet in a small flat, and they map out the two-pronged strategy for the decades to come. Tambo will lead the external struggle, the diplomacy, the sanctions, the Free Mandela campaign. And Mandela will return to lead the internal struggle. He becomes a legend in the South African press. They call him the Black Pimpernel. He is the most wanted man in the country, yet he seems to be everywhere at once. The government is humiliated by his ability to travel the world, to meet with world leaders, while they cannot catch him. After 6 months, invigorated, trained, and with a new global perspective, he makes the decision to return. He is smuggled back into South Africa. He knows the risk. He knows the net is closing. His high profile has made him an obsession for the security police. But his place, he feels, is at home with his soldiers. His time as a free man, as the Black Pimpernel, was running out. Chapter 15. The Capture at Howick, August 1962. August 5th, 1962. The scene is a quiet, lonely stretch of road in the province of Natal. A car is driving toward Johannesburg. In it is Nelson Mandela, disguised as David Motsamai, a chauffeur. He is driving Cecil Williams, a white theater director and fellow MK member. Mandela had just been to Durban to secretly brief ANC leader Chief Albert Luthuli on his trip. Now he is returning. In the rearview mirror, he sees the flashing lights of a police car. They are motioned to pull over. The moment is quiet, almost anticlimactic. It is, ostensibly, a routine check. A white police officer approaches the car. He looks at Cecil Williams, and then he looks at the chauffeur, and he says, "Mr. Mandela, you are under arrest." The game is over. His internal world, in that moment, is one of cold, calm resignation. He had been a fugitive for 17 months. He had known this moment would come. There is no resistance. There is no escape. The Black Pimpernel has been caught. The narrative core is the arrest itself, and the lingering, persistent questions around it. How did they know? How did they find him on this particular road, at this particular time? For decades it has been rumored, and in later years, largely substantiated, that the South African police were given a tip-off that an agent from the American Central Intelligence Agency had informed them of Mandela's route and disguise, trading the capture of an African communist for their own intelligence goals. He is captured, but the state, at this point, cannot yet tie him directly to the sabotage campaign of MK. They charge him with what they can prove, leaving the country illegally and inciting strikes. He is put on trial. He appears in court, not in a suit, but in a traditional Hosa kaross, a leopard skin cloak, a defiant political statement. He is found guilty. He is sentenced to 5 years in prison. He is sent to prison. He is taken out of the fight. The state believes it has neutralized its greatest threat. But while Mandela is in his cell, the security police get another tip, a bigger one. They raid a small farmhouse in a suburb called Rivonia. the secret underground headquarters of Umkhonto we Sizwe. And there, they find it all. They find the plans for the sabotage. They find the diaries. They find the direct, undeniable links between the new Spear of the Nation and its commander-in-chief, who is already sitting in their prison. The 5-year sentence is now irrelevant. The state has what it needs. They bring Nelson Mandela and the entire high command of MK, Walter Sisulu, Govan Mbeki, Ahmed Kathrada, and others, from their cells, and put them in the dock for the final great trial of their lives. Chapter 16. I Am Prepared to Die, 1963 to 1964. The Palace of Justice, Pretoria. 1963. The scene is one of immense gravity. This is not the treason trial. There will be no acquittals here. This is the Rivonia trial. In the dock sit Nelson Mandela and his closest comrades. The prosecution's case is overwhelming. They have the documents. They have the plans for Operation Mayibuye, a detailed plan for a full-scale guerrilla war. The charge once again is treason, or, more specifically, sabotage. And the prosecutor, Percy Utar, makes it clear he is asking for the death penalty. The internal world of the accused is one of grim, courageous resolve. They know the evidence is undeniable. They know they will be found guilty. The only question is whether the judge will sentence them to be hanged. In their holding cells, they have a debate, a terrible, profound debate. Should they appeal? Should they fight for their lives? Mandela argues no. They will not appeal. They will not beg for mercy. They will accept the verdict, even if it is death, as soldiers. They decide instead to turn the trial into a political testament. They will use the courtroom one last time to put apartheid on trial and to speak to the world and to history. The narrative core of this trial is not the legal argument. It is the statement from the dock. Mandela's lawyers, Bram Fisher and George Bizos, urge him not to use one particular phrase they have seen in his notes, a phrase that sounds like an invitation to martyrdom. On April 8th, 1964, it is Mandela's turn. He stands up. He is not a witness to be cross-examined. He is a man reading his last will and testament. He speaks for 4 hours. He calmly, methodically, lays out the entire history of the ANC. He explains why they turned to violence. He explains the gap between the rich white suburbs and the poor black townships. He explains Sharpeville. He explains, with the precision of a lawyer, how every single door of peace was slammed in their faces. And then he comes to his conclusion. He looks, not at the judge, but at the gallery, at the world, and, against the advice of his lawyers, he speaks the words he had written, the words that would echo for eternity. I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve, but, if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. Silence. The courtroom is stunned. Even the prosecutor is moved. The speech is printed in newspapers around the world. The international pressure on the South African government to not create a martyr becomes immense. The judge, Justice Quartus de Wet, recesses. The world holds its breath. When he returns, he finds them guilty. And then the sentence. He speaks of the callousness of their crimes, but perhaps moved by the speech, perhaps by the global pressure, he announces the sentence. Not death, life imprisonment. It is a small mercy, a lifetime, but not death. The men in the dock smile, relieved.
They have survived. But as they are led from the courtroom, they do not know what life will mean. They are taken in chains to a waiting plane. Their destination, a small, windswept, brutal island in the cold Atlantic. A place that would become the most famous prison in the world, Robben Island. Chapter 17. The University of the Island, 1964-1982. Robben Island. It is a rock, set in the freezing Atlantic waters, just off the coast of Cape Town. For centuries, it had been a place of exile, a leper colony, a military outpost. Now, it was the high-security prison for the Apartheid state's most dangerous political enemies. The scene is one of brutal, monotonous despair. Mandela and the other Rivonia trialists are political prisoners, but they are treated as the lowest class. They are given shorts to wear, a symbol of being boys. They are sent to work in the lime quarry. The quarry is a vision of hell. The blinding white sun reflecting off the white rock, a glare so intense it would permanently damage Mandela's eyesight. The work is mind-numbing and back-breaking, chipping away at the rock with small hammers all day, every day. The warders are Afrikaners, often uneducated, who bark orders, who humiliate them. Mandela's internal world, in this dark first hour, must have been a fortress. He is prisoner 466-64. He is 46 years old. He has been sentenced to life. He has no reason to believe he will ever be free. He has lost his family, his career, his movement. He is, by all measures, broken. But it is here, in the quarry, and in the cold, damp, tiny cell, that the real struggle begins. It is a struggle not against the state, but for his own dignity. And he uses the only weapon he has left, his mind. He institutes a regime of unbending discipline. He wakes before dawn. He exercises rigorously in his tiny cell. He is meticulous, polite, and unbendingly dignified, even to the warders who mock him. He refuses to be dehumanized. And the narrative core of this period, which stretches for years into a decade, then two, is the transformation of the prison. The prisoners organize. They fight, not with fists, but with principles. They hold hunger strikes for the right to have newspapers, for the right to wear long trousers, for the right to study. And they win, slowly, grudgingly. The state allows them to study, and Robben Island becomes the university. It is here, on the island, that the true, deep education of the movement happens. The older leaders, like Mandela and Sisulu, teach the younger generation, the fiery, angry Soweto generation that arrives after the 1976 uprisings. They debate. They teach each other literacy, history, economics, political theory. Mandela himself, in a move of profound strategic foresight, begins to study Afrikaans. He wants to understand the language, the culture, the mind of his oppressor. He reads their poetry. He talks to the warders in their own language. He begins, slowly, to see them, not as monsters, but as men, as products of their own history, their own fears. This is a new and far more subtle kind of struggle. Outside, the world is changing. The Free Mandela campaign, led by Oliver Tambo in exile, is growing. Nelson Mandela is no longer a man. He is a symbol, the most famous prisoner in the world. And after 18 long, grinding years on the island, the apartheid state, facing internal collapse and external sanctions, realizes it has a problem. It is not breaking Mandela. He is breaking them. They cannot keep him on this island, this symbol, forever. And so, in 1982, they move him. He and Sisulu are transferred in the dead of night to Pollsmoor Prison on the mainland. The first phase of his long imprisonment is over.
Chapter 18. The Long Walk to Talks, 1982-90. Pollsmoor Prison. It is, in some ways, a gilded cage. After the primitive conditions of Robben Island, Pollsmoor is a modern, concrete prison. Mandela is given a larger cell. Later, he is moved to a separate ward, then to a cottage in the grounds of Victor Verster Prison. He has a television. He has, for the first time in 2 decades, a measure of comfort. But this comfort is a new kind of prison. It is a prison of isolation. The government has separated him from his comrades. They have moved him from the university to a place of solitary confinement. His internal world is now facing its most complex and dangerous dilemma. The government, the same government that locked him away, is beginning to talk. Secretly, ministers and intelligence chiefs begin to visit him. They come, at first, as feelers. They are testing the water. The apartheid state is in a death spiral. The townships are on fire. The economy is collapsing under sanctions. They need a way out, and they see in this dignified, aging prisoner their only possible partner. For Mandela, this is the most terrifying gamble of his life. He is completely, totally isolated. He cannot consult Oliver Tambo in exile. He cannot debate with Walter Sisulu in the next cell. He must make this decision, this first tentative move, alone. He knows that if he is seen to be talking to the enemy, his own people, the radical youth in the townships, his comrades in exile, might see him as a traitor, a sellout. This is the narrative core, the secret negotiations. It is a high-stakes psychological chess match played out over years. The government offers him freedom. In 1985, President P.W. Botha offers to release him if he will renounce violence. Mandela, from his cell, refuses. He issues a statement, read by his daughter Zinzi at a rally. It is a thunderclap. I am not a prophet, but I am a member of the ANC. What freedom am I being offered, while the organization of the people remains banned? Only a free man can negotiate. Prisoners cannot enter into contracts. I cannot and will not give any undertaking. My freedom and yours cannot be separated. It is a masterstroke. He has refused, but he has also offered negotiation. He has thrown the ball back into their court. And so the secret talks continue. He is meeting with a committee of ministers. He is writing letters. He is laying the groundwork, not for his release, but for the release of his people. He is negotiating, from prison, the terms for a new South Africa. And then, the state blinks. The hardline P.W. Botha has a stroke. A new, more pragmatic, if conservative, leader takes his place. F.W. de Klerk. De Klerk, a man of the apartheid establishment, is also a realist. He sees the writing on the wall. The Soviet Union is collapsing. The ANC's main benefactor. The communist threat is gone. The country is ungovernable. The economy is in ruins. De Klerk makes the calculation. He must do the unthinkable. On February 2nd, 1990, F.W. de Klerk stands before the white-only parliament, and he stuns the world. He announces that he is unbanning the African National Congress. He is unbanning the Communist Party. He is unbanning all political organizations. And he is releasing, unconditionally, all political prisoners, including Nelson Mandela. 9 days later, on February 11th, 90,
The gates of Victor Verster prison swing open. Nelson Mandela, a man who had not been seen in public for 27 years, gray-haired but tall and unbowed, steps out and takes his wife Winnie's hand. He walks, slowly, deliberately, down the long prison driveway, into the sunlight, a free man. The world and South Africa would never be the same. The walk to freedom, as it turned out, was only the beginning. The man who emerged from prison was not a revolutionary bent on revenge. He was a statesman. But the 4 years that followed were, perhaps, the most dangerous of all. The negotiations for a new South Africa, the Codesa talks, were not a peaceful transition. They were a knife edge. The country was simmering on the brink of a full-scale civil war. But Mandela, alongside his old rival F.W. de Klerk, held the line. They pulled the nation back from the abyss, and for this, they would share the Nobel Peace Prize. And then, in '94, the miracle, the first all-race democratic election. The scene of Nelson Mandela, that old man, standing in a long, winding queue, just like everyone else, waiting, for the first time in his 75 years, to cast a vote. And the smile, the sheer, unadulterated joy. As he dropped his ballot in the box, he became president, and he used his power not to punish, but to heal. He famously, in '95, walked onto a rugby field, a sport beloved by his Afrikaner oppressors, wearing the green jersey of their team, the Springboks. It was a gesture, a masterstroke of reconciliation that did more to heal the nation than any law. His legacy is not one of sainthood. It is, perhaps, something more valuable. It is a legacy of human, profound, and difficult pragmatism. His life was not a straight line to glory. It was a series of painful, necessary pivots, from Chosa Royale to Gandhian protester to guerrilla commander to isolated prisoner to chief negotiator. His life reminds us that reconciliation is not a soft idea. It is a hard one. It is harder than war. It is the choice, the daily, agonizing, disciplined choice, to see the humanity in your oppressor and to build a future with them rather than to destroy them for the past. In a world still so deeply riven by division, by tribe, by race, by creed, his story is not a relic of history. It is a blueprint. It is a guide. It is a quiet, calming reminder that the longest and most impossible journey can indeed be walked, that the deepest wounds can, in time, be healed, and that the measure of a man is not in the power he holds, but in the peace he is willing to build. And so we leave him there, Rolihlahla, Nelson Madiba, a troublemaker who pulled the branch of a tree and brought the whole rotten structure falling down, only to build something new and beautiful in its place. Thank you for listening, and may your own long walk be peaceful. Good night.